Hello, my name is Barbara Hamilton, and I'm an interventional radiologist in Southern California. And thank you so much for joining us during this session on the IR gender gap. I'll be speaking today about standing with our female colleagues in other specialties. These are my disclosures. When you encounter a group of women physicians, especially those in a male-dominated field like IR, these are some of the stories you might commonly come across. A student tells a vascular surgeon she's working with that she'd like to do IR. He replies, "Not to be sexist, but women shouldn't do IR. How will you have a family if you do?" Or how about the time a fellow is told in a quarterly review that her asking questions and narrating during cases makes her seem incompetent? And finally, the chief of IR at a prominent academic institution walks up to an industry booth at the expo hall at SIR and is ignored in favor of the men who are present. These are not uncommon occurrences if you're a woman in IR, and I think these issues are also faced by women in other specialties. When I started my job, I didn't realize I'd become somewhat of a lifesaver. And working at a trauma center, it's no exaggeration to say that I get to save lives pretty much on a weekly basis. And so this career has been incredibly gratifying for me. And I know that a lot of my colleagues feel the same way. But when I was growing up in medicine, it wasn't clear if I'd be able to save lives and still enjoy my own. But I'm happy to report that it is possible. And here's some evidence of that. This is my little family floating in a canoe in the beautiful Grand Teton National Park. So women in male-dominated fields, we want the same things, and we face a lot of the similar sorts of challenges. And they're demonstrated by this meme here. "Doctor, an invisible man is here to see you." And this elderly white doctor says, "Tell him I can't see him." We still live in a very male-centric environment. So what can we do about this? Well, we can collaborate. And here are my ideas to do so. Number one, I think that we need to decrease the sense of isolation that we feel when we're working in male-dominated fields like IR and surgery. Number two, we need to pay attention to what others are doing to avoid reduplicating each other's efforts, and so we can build on each other's work. And number three is to take inspiration from each other. So I'll go into those in more detail. Number one, how can we decrease the isolation that we feel when we're just 8 to 9% of a given field? Well, this is the upside of social media, where we can gather even in times of COVID-19, and we can take part in conversations with other female physicians across specialty lines, whether it's on Twitter, Instagram, in Facebook groups, and so on. A great example of this is the Association of Women Surgeons, who has a Twitter account at Women Surgeons, who I recommend that you all follow. And they have regular tweet chats. And I wasn't sure how I'd be received there, since I don't technically fit the definition of a surgeon by the AWS. But when I participated in the tweet chat, even as a novice, I felt that my presence was valued there. I felt really welcomed because they have a lot of trainees and students who are joining, and they appreciate having another attending's perspective. I think they look to us as colleagues as well. This is another example of collaborating across specialty lines with the radiologists, and hashtag and at Rad Diversity. These are, this is a tweet chat that I'm taking part in to talk about how parenting in medicine has been affected in particular by COVID-19. And so a nice collaboration with the diagnostic radiologists. We can decrease the isolation that we feel in male-dominated fields by crossing borders, of course, just virtually for now. So the Canadian radiology women reached out to me to take part in a recent panel with some of their esteemed interventional radiologists, and it was a great time. So I think as women in IR, we can really help to decrease the isolation that we each feel, and that felt by students and trainees and our colleagues. And the way that we can do this is by showing ourselves. I think being visible is really powerful. And so I've made it a point to be as visible as possible now that I'm an attending and I've established myself in my practice. So what that looked like for me was I started a blog. I wrote there. I've been writing there for 2.5 years now. And that led to a book, and that has led to a podcast. And all of these things have funneled into the ability to network and influence among other female physicians who face similar challenges to that we do in IR. This might look a little different for you. Not everyone needs to start a blog or write a book. You may feel more comfortable reaching out to a local news outlet and talking about your clinical expertise. I think anything you can do to increase your visibility as a woman physician only helps us all, and it's a great way to stand with our colleagues, our female colleagues in other specialties. So number 2 in the methods we can use to stand with our female colleagues in other specialties is to pay attention to what others are already doing. And we're all busy, so this can be difficult, but we can really benefit from the work that's going on in other specialties. And so an example of this is the Association of Women Surgeons, who has done a tremendous amount of work to support their women surgeons since the 1980s when they were founded. And student membership is just $25 per year. I just registered to become an associate member because you can do that as an interventionalist. And I highly recommend this free resource that they have on their website, which is called The Pocket Mentor. And I've read this book, and it's available electronically, completely for free. And it gives fantastic advice on how to excel in your clerkships and just how to excel in life, really. So this is advice that really transcend any particular specialty. This is a great way to stand with our colleagues in other specialties. And really, Women in IR as a section has drawn inspiration from the AWS in the past. When we were forming our Women in IR Champion Award, we looked to them and what they were doing with their particular awards. And likewise in the future, if we develop a logo and things like that. So this is a great way to avoid reinventing the wheel. We can really build on what other people have already done in other areas. Another way to stand with our colleagues is to share our own resources with women in other specialties. So an example of this is occupational radiation exposure. This is a concern that crosses specialty lines, and it's a deterrent for women entering other fields like not just interventional radiology, but interventional cardiology, vascular surgery, neurosurgery, and so on. So any opportunity I have, I take to share the pregnancy toolkit that's on the SIR's website, because I think this is a really fantastic way to stand with our colleagues. The third way that we can stand with our colleagues in other specialties is to take inspiration from each other. And one way I've decided to do this is by starting a podcast. It's called Save Lives, Enjoy Your Own. And I tell some stories about training and how I got into the specialty of IR. But I was really pleased to hear from a STEM professor who reached out to me. She found the podcast and she said that it resonated with her as well. So it's tremendous that I think we can share some of these lessons and some of our experiences, even with women across the STEM fields. I think it's very relatable. Another group of people we can really collaborate with is with industry. I mean, the industry partners we work with, they are also in a very male-dominated space. And an example of a company doing something about this is Terumo Medical Corporation, and they have the WIN initiative, WIN, which focuses on promoting women in the workplace. And these are their 4 strategic pillars, which you can see here. So I really applaud them for making this organizational initiative. Another way we can inspire each other is through cross-specialty meetings. And I am taking it upon myself to start a cross-specialty retreat in Palm Springs. It's going to happen in October. And the purpose is to allow people to meet across specialties who otherwise wouldn't have the opportunity at a national meeting. So I'm not going to be able to go to SIR and meet a surgeon or an orthopedist. So this is a great way for us to come together and mastermind some solutions to our common issues. So it's pretty clear that we share some common joys and challenges in medicine and some of the STEM fields. So consider how you might join forces with women in other fields. You might just find that when you do, you'll feel more connected and less isolated. We can build upon each other's gains and upon each other's work that's already been done. We can avoid reinventing the wheel that way. And we can find inspiration in places that we didn't necessarily expect to find it. So thank you so much for having me to talk about standing with our colleagues in other specialties. These are some ways that you can contact me.